What's going on, everybody? Simple back at it like I'm checking my height. Today we are checking out 6 reasons why the Dutch are happier than Americans by creator David Wen. So if you enjoy this content, make sure you head on over to his channel. Show him some support over there as well. Yeah, let's get into it.
If the meaning of life is the pursuit of happiness, who's happier, Americans or the Dutch?
Cat is tearing
Hello
me
and
up
welcome
right now.
back to my channel. My name is David, and in this video I want to talk about the differences between American and Dutch culture and how these differences affect our happiness levels.
Okay. The pursuit of happiness.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is written in the US Declaration of Independence. But when it comes to the actual pursuit of happiness in today's day and age, how does a place like the US compare to the Netherlands? Well, according to the World Happiness Report, generally, Europeans seem to be the happiest people in the world. They're generally at the very top of these rankings, and if you look at the past rankings, the US comes out at number 14, compared to the Netherlands at number 5. And this is based on life evaluation questions such as GDP, social support, corruption, freedom, life expectancy. Take life expectancy as an example.
It's sad that we have corruption on a list as like a social standard to report on. Like we know what happens, but we don't do anything about it.
The
Kind of weird.
typical American will live up to around the age of 79, compared to 82 years for the typical Dutch. So, on average, the Dutch live a few years longer
Almost
than the
halfway
typical
there, baby.
American. Now, when you look at general happiness levels for the US, it's fallen over the past few decades, which begs the question why? What happened? And why, in general, are the Dutch happier than the typical American?
Hmm.
Student debt is a big part of American culture, and it doesn't take a
Huge.
scientist to understand that when you have a lot of student debt, you might be more stressed out. And when you're more stressed out, you tend to be less happy. And America has a lot of student debt. In fact, the average American has $37,000 in student debt. Compare that with the Netherlands.
And now think about that getting out of school, right? And all of a sudden now you're just stuck with this debt that you're constantly paying back. You can't even get ahead in life because everything costs so much. So it's just kind of
Where the average Dutch person has
stuck.
around 14,000 euros or $16,000 in student debt. So, why is this so? Why does America have so much student debt? Well, it's quite simple. It's extremely expensive to study in the US. If you look at the cost of tuition, if you want to attend a 4-year college, a 4-year private college in the US, expect to pay around $37,000 in tuition alone per year. It's a bit cheaper if you go to a public school. If you go to a public university, expect to pay anywhere between $10,000 to $30,000 per year in tuition, depending if it's in-state or if you come out of state.
Hmm.
And if you go to a state school or
It's quite a
community
bit
college,
anyway.
it's a lot cheaper. But in general, if you go to a 4-year school, university in the US, expect to pay around $100,000 in tuition alone. Now, compare this to the Netherlands, where the average cost of tuition for 1 year, it's only around $2,500. So when you compare a 4-year degree in the US, $100,000 compared to a 4-year degree in the Netherlands, $10,000, it's a lot cheaper to study in the Netherlands. And I also think this has a big effect on people's careers as well and what people study. You see, when you can afford to change careers in a place like the Netherlands, you have more time to think about what you might enjoy, what you
Hmm.
might like to do, what kind of
That makes
job you might
sense.
like.
I mean, obviously, when you have more time in between things, that you can just kind of take a second and take a step back and really think about some life decisions, it definitely makes a huge difference, especially in the stress level. Because, I mean, here in America, the decisions have to be made so fast. Everybody's on the move so much. We just, I don't know, it's a faster way of life, I guess.
I actually know quite a few people who decided to change their careers or do another bachelor's here
Hmm.
in the Netherlands because it is affordable. Now, in the US, if you decide to study something like art, history, especially in a place like San Francisco, it's going to be difficult for you to repay that back afterwards when it comes to finding a job, unless you come from a wealthy family. But if you don't, then you really have to consider, okay, how am I going to repay my education? I remember for myself, in my first year of university, I actually decided to study marine biology because I always had a fascination with the oceans. But after the first quarter, I thought, okay, what am I going to do with a marine biology degree? What kind of job would I get? How much debt would I have? And
Yeah,
that really
working at
stressed me
SeaWorld,
out. So immediately
unfortunately.
afterwards, I switched to economics because I wanted to go
It's
the
here in
safe
America.
route. And that's very common in the US for people to think about not what they might want to study, but what type of degree would get me a good job to help pay off my student loans. The other thing that I want to add is that when you have an education system like the US where there's a lot of competition, that causes a lot of stress and
There's
it
definitely a lot of
inhibits the
competition
learning.
in
And
schools.
so there's been so
That's
many
for
studies that
sure.
show when you're stressed out, you learn less. So as a result, I think Dutch students learn a lot more because they're less stressed out as well. And this happiness starts at a very young age. In fact, in childhood, where play, fun, relax is a very big part of Dutch culture. In fact, Dutch kids are the happiest kids in the world. And that's because they believe that having fun, being relaxed, playing is a very pivotal, transformational part of childhood. And we know from research how important.
I mean, think about how tough it is on the kid psyche anyway to, in America, have to worry about going outside, getting taught that, you can't go out alone, don't talk to strangers, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, but have fun, you know? So,
Childhood is.
and
So
where,
if a
I guess
child
in the
learns how to
Netherlands, it's
play,
different.
how
You
to
get
be
to go
relaxed,
outside, you
that can
ride your bike
flow
to school
into
by
adulthood
yourself,
as
like,
well.
you
I
learn
remember
independence
when
earlier.
I started my master's program here, in the first week we did presentations about our childhoods and our education systems, where we came from. And when I presented, I talked about high school, how stressful it was. SATs, GPAs, extracurriculars to try to get into a good college. I was very stressed out. And when the Dutch students came and did their presentation, they said that life was pretty stress free up until university. In fact, they didn't even know what stress was until university. They didn't get homework until their teenage years. Actually, kids here, they don't get homework up until their teenage years. So, childhood and being a student here is quite relaxed because play is a very big part of Dutch culture. Oh, hey, I should really stop working because it's past 5 p.m. As an American living and working in Europe, it's still a bit difficult for me to shut down because I still have that work, work, work mentality that there's always work to be done, that I
Mm.
might fall behind. It's built into the
A lot of
DNA of the
sleepless
American
nights.
culture, right? It stems from education and it flows into the workplace as well.
Oh,
And
absolutely, because you spend so many nights studying and trying to get essays done or projects done or just anything that you have to, it's crazy. It's so crazy. Like you said before, though, it's the amount of competition. I feel like that plays into it a lot.
as a result, Americans work more on average per week than the typical Dutch. Whereas here, when I first got here, it was weird to see people leaving at 5, 5:30. And for me, I never left that early. If I did, I always felt a bit weird about it because no one else was leaving at 5, 5:30. I usually left normally around 6, 7, sometimes 8 o'clock. And that's because it's built into the work culture in the US, and it's a good and also bad thing as well when you work so much. There's that ambition, that drive to create something amazing, but at the same
Cha-ching!
time, people here value different things as well. They value having a bit more balance in their lives. And take a look at vacation days, for example.
I just
In the
value being able to
US,
pay bills.
people don't get that many vacation days. Actually, the federal government does not
For
guarantee
most
a
Americans, I
minimum
think.
paid vacation days per person.
Hmm.
It depends on the company. Whereas in countries like the Netherlands, in the Netherlands, we get a minimum of 20 days per year. And
Wow.
it depends on the company. For example, I get 25 days per year, and most people here take them. Most people here take all the vacation days per.
Oh, so that's Okay, so we have a lot of Dutchies hanging out in the Discord. If you guys haven't hit up the Discord, make sure you guys come and hang out. Um, and I've seen a lot of them be like, "Yeah, we're gonna go on holiday," and then they're just gone for like a week, week and a half, or whatever. And it's never dawned on me that it's because you guys get 20 set holiday like days for holiday, and whereas here it's like you can go, the whole year without holiday, and then sometimes to get you from going, they just kind of like I don't want to say roll it over. I don't know. Some places force you to take it. Let me know how it is if you guys are American watching this. Let me know how it is at your company, what your vacation time consists of, and stuff like that. I mean, it's definitely been a long time since I've had a job, considering I'm disabled. On disability, I should say, not disabled, but
Year, whereas in the US,
I guess that wouldn't make
it's a bit
sense. I
different.
broke my
It's a bit
neck.
weird because the US is the country that has the most unused vacation days left at the end of each year, which begs the question why.
Yeah, the
And I
most
think it
unused
has to
vacation
deal
days at
with
the end of the year.
fear of falling behind, fear of
Yeah,
potentially getting
definitely.
replaced,
Oh,
fear
absolutely.
of taking time off when no one else around you is taking time off. But here, it's the norm, especially during summertime when everyone else is out of the office taking their holidays. So it becomes the norm here for people to take time off to relax.
Hmm,
And they actually get the days off to relax as well. Also, take a
that's
look at
cool.
sick leave, for example. In the US, there's
Good
no
luck in
federal
America.
mandate that guarantees paid sick leave for an employee. It depends on the state. For example, in California,
Just kidding.
now you get 1 hour of paid sick leave for every 30 hours worked. Now, in a place like the Netherlands, which has, I believe, one of the best policies in the world, if you're sick, you get paid 70% of your salary for 2 years.
Wow,
That's pretty good, right? So, as a
that's
result of all of
incredible.
these federal
That's an incredible
policies,
change.
and also inherently this fear that's built into the American work culture, I think people
Crazy.
here in the Netherlands are generally happier because they have more vacation time to spend with their family, friends, themselves. They actually take the vacation time as well. And also, there's not as much fear in this country of getting fired. And actually, having worked in HR now for 2 years, I can say that for employees here, it's actually really hard for them to get fired.
Wow.
Whereas in the US, getting
It,
fired,
it
that's a real thing.
getting fired here is as simple as show up 10 minutes late for your work and your manager's having a bad day. Like it's and I'm not saying it's like that in all states or even all situations cuz that's kind of extravagant, but it's definitely that easy to lose your job. Like they in my state you don't need a reason to get fired. They can just be like, "Sorry, we don't need you anymore. Bye." Done. And it's not you can't do anything. So now you're out of a job, you're out of a paycheck. And I think that's where a lot of the competition stems from because growing up as a kid, you see how hard your parents have to work just to be able to get things for you, provide anything, including food on the table and stuff. So, yeah.
Which leads me to talk about a very important point I want to make about happiness. The difference between standing out in the US versus standing in or being average in the Netherlands. Because in the US, we grow up thinking that we're the best, that we want to
Do it.
be the best that we can be. We want to stand out by going to a good school, getting a good job. We want to stand out by the clothes that we wear, the car that we drive, the people that we hang out with. It's really about standing out, being unique. Compare that with the Netherlands, where it's the exact opposite. It's about standing in, it's about being the same. There's a Dutch saying that goes something like,
Be normal?
act normal,
Yeah,
then you're
act
crazy
normal.
enough. Because being the same, being
Bro,
average,
killing me right now.
that's built into society
Straight up.
here. Take a look at the clothes people wear. I think people dress quite fashionably here, but they also dress quite similarly as well. Take a look at the food. It doesn't really stand out.
Yum.
Take a look at the buildings. They kind of look the same as well. The weather's kind of the same as well. Most days of the year, it's rainy, gloomy, cloudy. People bike here, and when people bike in public, when they dress the same, the buildings look the same, everything's really the same. But there's a beauty in that because you're not comparing yourself as much. You have less comparison points.
Less
And when you're
competition.
comparing yourself less, then you become happier. Because in the US, the culture is really about comparing yourself to other people.
Yeah,
That's essentially the rat
definitely the way
race.
it's
It's
become.
running on this treadmill where nothing is ever enough. Compare that to the Netherlands where acting normal, then you're crazy enough. Well, I want to add a few more things to say about this rat race that's inherent in all parts of the world, but especially the US. This rat race, well, it's a mindset. It's this competition for power, for wealth. And when I first came here, what I noticed was, at least from my American perspective, was that people weren't very ambitious in the workplace. And then I met this friend from Amsterdam. He told me that people here aren't very ambitious when it comes to work because of how the system's built here. The higher up that they go, the more taxes they have to pay. And also, you don't gain as much money when you go up the ladder as compared to the US. And so now I understand why people don't go and kill themselves to try to climb up the corporate ladder because they get taxed more. Also, they don't earn that much more because the difference between a normal employee here and, say, the CEO, it's not as much as, say, the US, where the gap is a lot bigger, where someone could be earning $50,000 in the US and the CEO could be making $50 million. So really, from a professional point of view, there's really no big incentive because how the system is structured here, it favors being average, right? You can live a pretty high quality of life just being average. And when you don't have that stress to climb up the corporate ladder, and when you don't see people around you with that same level of ambition, then you're less stressed and you're a lot happier as well.
Makes sense. Definitely makes sense.
Well, let's talk about healthcare. In a study of 11 of the highest income countries around the world, they compared the healthcare systems of these countries. Which countries had the best systems? Which countries had the worst healthcare systems? And the US came in last place. Norway and the Netherlands came
Yeah, it
in
doesn't
at
surprise
1
me.
and 2. So why is this so? Well, the US has always had a reputation, a bad reputation when it comes to healthcare. Not everyone in the US has healthcare coverage. Not everyone has universal healthcare coverage. 92% of
On
the US
disability, I don't
population
even
has
have healthcare
healthcare
coverage.
coverage, leaving 8%. But 8% of a big population, that's a big number. Whereas in a country like the Netherlands, almost 100% of people living in this country have healthcare. Because it's required by law to have at least a basic plan of healthcare. And let's be honest, healthcare in the US is expensive. It's really expensive.
Yeah, it is.
For example, when you look at deductibles, the amount that each person has to pay out of pocket before healthcare kicks in the US it's $1,700 per person. In a place like the Netherlands, it's around 400 euros. So that's a big
I know
difference.
people that are
The amount
paying
that each person has to
$2,500
pay
before healthcare
out of
kicks
pocket in the US
But that-
as
that could
compared
just
to
be-
the Netherlands.
That could just be compared to when this video was done as well, so don't take that into account.
And I'm sure we've heard of these horror stories of people in the US paying $600 for a band-aid, $25,000 for an MRI. It's extravagant, these
Yeah.
prices people pay when they don't have insurance or when they don't have the proper insurance as well.
Price gouging.
So just like
Not allowed to.
education, the healthcare
Sucks.
system in the US, it's sort of like a business,
Sucks,
a
Mr.
business
Crowley.
to make money.
It sucks,
And as a
Mr.
result,
Crowley.
I believe generally people living in a country like the Netherlands are generally happier because they have access to affordable healthcare. They're not worried about paying an extravagant sum for an operation or for something small as well. So here's a story about myself. When I first arrived in this country, the Netherlands, I was walking in the park and I got bit by a dog, by a pit bull on the wrist. And there was some blood, and luckily there were some police officers nearby. They told me to go to the hospital nearby, the ER. And immediately in my mind, I thought, how much money is this going to cost to go to the ER just to get a shot? Because in the US, I remember things are really expensive even if you do have healthcare. And so I was hesitant in going to the ER.
Yeah, I
But
would be
eventually,
too.
because it was important that I needed to get a shot within 2 days, I went to the ER and the ER redirected me to a nearby general practitioner. And I got my shot and it was free. It was covered by my healthcare. But I just had this fear in my head,
Hmm.
how much would it cost me, even though I had healthcare?
Yeah, that's
So
one of the
cycling is a
biggest
big
fears.
part of Dutch culture,
Well, I
and
don't
that's a
go to
big
the
reason
doctor for
why
anything
Dutch
ever.
people are a lot healthier
No
than
point. I don't have the
Americans
money.
because here everyone cycles, everyone walks. There's actually more bicycles than humans here. And the infrastructure here is built for cycling, so when you walk everywhere and you cycle everywhere, you tend to be healthier compared to the typical American who spends her time driving, stuck in a car.
Mm.
I remember when I lived in LA, I had a local supermarket 2 blocks away, but I would drive there because that's what people do in LA. They drive everywhere. And so that is a big difference between the US and the Netherlands. People here are healthier because they cycle, they walk everywhere compared to Americans who drive everywhere.
I can't believe it took me 30 minutes just to
Makes
get a
sense.
burger from McDonald's. That's not really fast food here in the Netherlands, but actually, that's the point. There's not as many temptations, and fast food here is not really fast food compared to the US. And I remember when I lived in the US, in
You mean it took
LA,
30 minutes? Hold up. What did he like order it? They cooked it right up on the spot type of thing? Like,
things were open late at
how does
night. It
that
was
work?
extremely convenient, and I would get tacos late at night. I would drive to Del Taco, get 10 tacos, and finish that in 30 minutes. That became a common thing, a very easy thing to do. And you can see why Americans are so obese. They're actually the most obese country in the OECD countries, the wealthy countries. And it's because there's so much fast food, things are so convenient, and they're open 24/7 in many places as well. Compared to the Netherlands here, things aren't open 24/7. You don't have as many temptations to go get fast food late
Right,
at
you do.
night. And when you do have that craving, and it's cold and it's raining outside, you don't even want to go outside. So that's really a simple formula, right? For being healthy, for being happy, when you don't have as many temptations, you don't go eat bad food, and you add in cycling and walking, and that's really that simple formula for fitness, for good health. And when you have good health, then you become happier. Sounds simple, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I think we as Americans can learn a thing or two from the Dutch when it comes to this pursuit of happiness.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
I'm not saying that Americans should be exactly like the Dutch. No, I don't think so. There's a reason why America is the most powerful country in the world with so many innovative solutions. But what if we toned it
It is
down a
it
bit?
it is the competitiveness. I guess that's probably one of the biggest reasons why we stay ahead is the competitiveness to stay ahead. Kind of
Can we
snowball
still
effects.
achieve the same with a happier workforce, happier kids? Well, the studies seem to say so, linking happiness with more productivity and achievements as well. But I don't know, we'll see. These are my opinions as a Californian living, studying, and working in the Netherlands for about 3 years now. What are your thoughts? What are your opinions? Thank you so much for staying until the very end. I wish you well, I wish you happiness, and I hope you take care.
Thank you very much, David. If you guys enjoyed this, like I said, make sure you head on over to his channel. Show him some support over there. Maybe even go through, watch a couple of his videos, and then come back. Let me know what you'd like to see a reaction to. Like I said, Google form is down in the description below. I have cat hair everywhere. This cat sheds so much. Um, yeah, Google form is down in the description below. Make sure you guys check out the Creator Consortium when you have a chance. Check out one of the other two videos, and I'll catch you on the next one.